Alright, I need to talk to you guys about this crazy heat that we are having right now. I know it's hard to believe, but we are still weeks away from the start of summer. Summer doesn't begin technically until the third week of June, and yet right now this weather that we're having feels like July. It is so hot, and I'm not just making that up for those of you who don't go outside as much as we have to. It is really unnaturally hot right now in the RVA area. The high temperature for the average last week of May, this current time period that we are in, is 81 or 82 degrees, and that's the average high. Right now, this week, our high temperatures are in the mid-90s. I'm talking 94, 95, 96, some areas even hitting 97, 98. It is roasting. And that 10 to 15 degree difference in what we normally experience this time of year versus what we're experiencing in 2019 is making a massive difference for lawns. As you guys know from the video that we did a few weeks ago on this same subject about how Fescue hates the heat, Fescue hates the heat. It doesn't do well with these high temperatures. As a result, the vast majority of lawns in our area, whether they are maintained by the homeowner, maintained by Picture Perfect, or maintained by one of our competitors, they are all starting to show huge signs of heat stress. Let me show you exactly what that looks like. This is my friend's lawn next door to where our Pplm offices are located. And they do not have in-ground irrigation. So all of the watering that they're doing is with an above-ground sprinkler head. This is about where they put that sprinkler head, in the middle of the yard where it is mostly green. But you can see in a few areas how it kind of has this purplish haze. And I'm going to show you guys that a little bit more up close so you can see what I'm talking about. When grass first begins to show signs of heat stress, it turns a blue or purple color on top of that natural green. And that's what you can see kind of here behind me, is it's got that purplish tinge to it. And that is the indicator that it's not getting enough water, that it's really suffering from the heat, and it's about to do this. And it's gonna turn that brown color, that straw shut down, dormant, possibly dead color, and that's what we want to avoid. So again, this is what that looks like. Nice and green and healthy, starting to turn that purple color and going completely brown. And the reason that you see that in these stages out in this part of the lawn is out here's getting water. It's where the roots are the deepest. It's getting some water, so it's a lot healthier. Here is where that water no longer reaches, and here is where it's up against the road. And on top of just normal sun heat that it's also getting radiation heat from the road that's right next to it. And you can probably hear the difference too when you walk on it, and that's going to be your indicator that this is due to the grass drying up and just shutting down, where it almost has that crispy, crunchy noise to it. And as a result, if you remember from the videos that we did about how bad frost can be for your lawn, it's the same principle with this crunchy, dry heat. Walking on it, and especially putting a mower on it, can be really damaging, so you want to leave it alone if it goes dormant from all of this heat stress. Now let's talk about the yards that are going to be at the greatest risk for turning that purple and then that brown color as we experience these high heat levels and really low rainfalls. Direct sun is your biggest trigger in terms of that. As you can see, the area of our property at the shop that I'm in is shaded, and as a result, it's still green. It's not really happy, but on top of being shaded, it's also being irrigated, and that's gonna be your second trigger. Your grass needs water in these conditions. I know this is a complete reversal from what we experienced last year, where we received so much rainfall that most lawns didn't need to be watered at all last year. This year, that's not the case. You've got to turn that water on if you haven't done so already, or your lawn is going to turn brown. But running your irrigation still might not be enough, because you could have coverage issues. And that's something that we've seen with a lot of properties that we've visited in the last week or so. They're clearly running their irrigation and parts of their lawn are doing all right, but other parts are still brown because they haven't tested their irrigation to make sure that the coverage is even and that every inch of the property is getting the full amount of water that it needs. So direct sunlight, big factor. You're getting all the heat. Irrigation, huge factor, your lawn is thirsty. And those tie together because if your lawn has shallow roots, it's not gonna matter how much you're watering it if it can't soak all of it up. So my young lawns, my recently beautifully seeded lawns, my newly sodded, newly built homes lawns, you are at the biggest risk. Please be cautious if you have a newly established property, because that lack of root development is going to be the make it or break it for this season. Within your property, there may be some areas of the yard that are more likely to show the first signs of heat stress, and that purple and then brown, than other parts, and these are going to be along the road like we saw at our neighbor's property, or the top of the hill where you're not having as much water hold, or you're getting kind of that wind shear. These areas are going to dry out faster and they're going to be hotter in general, so you want to be careful with those spots, maybe put down a little bit of extra water. Aside from heat stress, the other problem that can arise from these high levels of temperature and humidity is fungus, and that's another thing I know that you guys are probably getting sick of hearing me talk about, but we're seeing high rates of brown patch again this year for the opposite reason. Last year it was because we had so much rainfall, everybody's lawn just festered. This year it's because we're having such high heat and humidity early in the season when the grass is still delicate and it was damaged from last year and it's in recovery mode. Now it's just getting hit again. It's kind of like a relapse almost. So we want to make sure that you guys are keeping an eye on your lawns, and if you see brown in the turf that you didn't see a day or two beforehand, get outside, get on ground level, and look at the individual blades of grass.
So let's say this is your yard and you come outside and you've got a brown patch like this, and you say, oh no, I've got the fungus. What do? Well, let's look at it up close. As you can see, this brown is crispy crunchy like the yard that we looked at next door. The individual blades of grass are going to be kind of thinned out and curled up and really dry like straw. I don't know if any of you people have rabbits or rodents that eat hay, but this is going to be kind of similar to what you're getting for them. And most importantly, it's going to be pretty uniform throughout the blade. You're not going to see increments of green and brown on the same part of the grass. And that right away tells us that this is heat stress. This isn't any kind of fungus. This is just a really dry part of the yard that has kind of given up on life and is waiting for a good dose of rain and cooler temperatures.
Again, don't forget that purple color is going to be your warning sign that brown is soon to follow. So if you see that purple developing, let us know. Let's talk about increasing the water, what we can do to keep it from turning brown like that. But let's talk about what fungus brown looks like.
Let's say you come outside and you see this. It's pretty similar, right? It's brown patches in the yard, and we want to find out if this is from the dry or if it's from the fungus.
Remember how when we got down at ground level just a second ago and felt that dry, crispy grass? This is gonna feel different.
With this kind of brown, when you get on ground level, instead of feeling dry, it's going to feel funky and humid as you get closer to the base of the plant. Kind of like when you reach into the washing machine after you've run your clothes on a warm cycle and it still feels humid and not quite pleasant. So if we get closer, you see kind of a rotting effect taking place at the base of the grass, while there's still a good amount of green up top. And that's our first clue that there is something festering in the system. If we dive even closer and look at the individual blades of grass, you'll see that there are patches of brown against the normal green, and that's a sign of fungal issues. These blades are kind of wilty, they're floppy, they're not that rigid, dry feeling that we had from the grass in the hot spot, and that's kind of because it has too much moisture instead of not enough involved in the system.
So if it's heat, it's going to be crispy and the whole thing is going to be brown after turning purple first. If it's fungus, you're still going to see some green mixed in with the brown in terms of the general area, as well as on individual blades of grass. I know the majority of picture perfect lawns right now are not looking picture perfect, and we are right there with you. Our personal property is hurting, our shop is hurting, as you can see. It's just bad weather. I've had a few people who have called and just kind of said, hey, did you over apply something on my lawn? And I just want to make sure that you guys know that that's not the case. This is a natural process, and unfortunately, with everything going on with the climate, it's just not ideal conditions. Again, this year, for a very different reason. for fescue to be growing. So stay patient, it will get better. They are calling for cooler temperatures again next week. We just have to get through this heat wave and try to get a last pinch of spring in. I appreciate you guys staying up to date. If you have questions about your lawn, please let me know. Don't just sit there and frown. Give me a call so that we can talk about it and figure out the best plan and protocol for your property. Again, thanks for watching. Have a picture perfect day. Stay cool. I'm sweating, I'm going inside, and we'll talk to you guys again later.